Hey, welcome back, Knicks fans. We're going to talk about these New York Knicks. They won their third straight game yesterday. They beat the Charlotte Hornets and won their third straight game. And how did they do it? They did it with defense, and they did it by playing hard. And we're going to talk about what's happened, why it seems like they were against the Mavs. They were one team. Then the very next day against the Cleveland Cavs, they were a brand new team playing defense. And it seems like they're totally committed on the defensive end. And the last three games have shown they're committed on the defensive end. But before we get any further, I'd really like for everyone to please like and subscribe to this video. I'm sorry, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please feel free to comment below. I'll be more than happy to respond to any comments you guys have. So we're just going to go over real quick how the New York Knicks won this game. Look, the Charlotte Hornets were shorthanded. They're very shorthanded. They're missing their star player in LaMelo Ball. They're missing Hayward. So they're missing some key pieces on their team. But we still played them. We manhandled the team in the fourth quarter, and which you should be looking for the New York Knicks to do right. You don't want to, if the Knicks won this game by slugging it out like in the fourth quarter and win by, let's say, 2-3 points, you would have been like, you'll still take the win, right? And you would obviously have to look, okay, how did they play on defense? What was their effort? What did their effort look like? But they really did a great job against the Hornets, played really good, very solid defense against these Hornets, and they were able to come away with the win. And so they really won this game. If you look at it, it was really based on their efficiency, how efficient they were, and basically the ability to rebound the basketball. So if you like, and a lot of times we're going to start focusing mostly on the most important stats, the stats that help determine the team's ability to win. That's really what I'm going to focus a lot on. And so, like I said, is basically the team's defense. Basically, are they more efficient than the team that they were playing? And then, like, how good are they at rebounding? Because rebounding is one of the easiest way to either get your team extra possessions, or to basically, that's obviously, you want to be able to close out possessions and get defensive rebounds. And so that's the reason why rebounding and basically your net efficiency, how much more efficient than other team are you, are basically the two things that determine a team's ability to win, right? And so we're going to focus on that, like I said. And so in this game, the New York Knicks have 48 rebounds, 16 offensive rebounds. And then the Hornets had 45 rebounds and 12 offensive rebounds. So we basically got 4 more extra possessions than they did, especially on the boards. And so that was one thing. And then if you look on a defensive end, specifically 3-point defense, the Knicks only allowed them to shoot 23% from the 3-point land, and the Knicks shot about 38%. So we made 13 threes, and they made only 6 threes. So the combination of the Knicks having 4 more possessions than they did, actually 5 if you include, like, we were +1 on the turnover front. So having the 5 extra possessions and then basically making, what was this? Making more 3-pointers than they did, basically was the reason why we won this game. And essentially, we made 7 more 3-pointers than they did. And so that's pretty much the reason why the New York Knicks was able to basically blow them out, right? And so we're just going to look over at just the breakdown of the shot chart. And so if you look here, we didn't do that great inside the paint. We did shoot pretty well from the 3. We shot 38% from the 3. As you see here, everything here at the 3-point, out in the 3-point range was green. So that means basically we were a little more efficient than the rest of the league at least that night. So on this particular night, the New York Knicks were basically more efficient than the rest of the league from 3-point range. But if you look inside of the 3-point range, we really wasn't that much more efficient. We shot 55% at the rim. That's not terrible. That's about, on average, that's league average. But that night, the league average was 66%. But hey, it is what it is. Not that big of a deal. And then from here, we wasn't very good, like in the mid range. We were really terrible from the mid range. But we were able to overcome it, and we were able to overcome all these issues. Actually, this issue in terms of finishing at a higher level in the paint and also from mid-range, we overcame it because we had really good defense. Now, if you have excellent defense like the Knicks have been playing, you just give yourself a chance, right? You give yourself a chance to figure it out on the offensive end. And then also good defenses, especially strong defenses, is always going to wear down the opponent, right? And then the opponent, a lot of times, if you wear them down, if you're able to wear them down, a lot of times when opponents are struggling, when people are struggling on the offensive end, sometimes your defense also slacks off if it's a team that's not really mentally strong and they're not locked in and committed. And that's what's going to happen. And so the Knicks playing this kind of defense, it's always going to give them a chance to win a lot of ball games. And if they keep playing defense like this, they're going to be fine and they're going to win a lot of ball games. But look, as I said in the prior video, I just want to wait and see how well they do going forward. And the reason why, the biggest difference on the defensive end is Jalen Brunson, R.J. Barrett, and Julius Randle. Prior to the Cavs game, those three were the reason why the New York Knicks were losing ball games. And it was all on the defensive end. It was their inability to commit and stay focused and locked in on the defensive end and also hustle on the defensive end. That's pretty much all it was. During the last video, we kind of went through the New York Knicks, basically what their shooting percentages were, and how it stacked up against all the teams that they played. And so overall, the New York Knicks had been overall more efficient than the teams that they played. I think at the point out of 22 games that they played, or 21 games, whatever it was, the New York Knicks basically, 14 games they were more efficient than their opponent, and then there were 7 games where the opponent was more efficient than they were. And so pretty much what that tells you is the issue for the New York Knicks is pretty much it was pretty much their 3-point defense was terrible. And we're going to go over the reason why. Part of that video we also talked about what was the issue with their 3-point defense? Was the issue the coach's schemes? Was it the scheme or coaching issue? Or was this just an issue with the players? And of course, during that video, we established that it was a player issue. We're also going to go into that a little bit today, look at some other examples of other teams that are actually, I'm not going to say they played the exact same defense, but they definitely employed the same principles. And they also a lot of other teams employ the same strategy. And so really usually the difference is how locked in are the players on the defensive end, how well are they committed to playing team defense, and how are they willing to hustle? Are they willing to basically, let's say they have responsibilities guarding the paint. Now, if there's a penetrator who comes in the paint and then swings the ball out to the 3-point line, are you going to be committed? Are you going to hustle out to the 3-point line and challenge the shot? That's pretty much what the question is. And obviously prior to the Cavs game, the answer was no, they weren't committed to it. They were not hustling out the 3-point lines. There was a lot of confusions on the rotations. And it's not even rotations going out to the 3-point line. A lot of times there's a lot of rotation. There's a lot of switching that happens underneath, especially when you have a pick and roll going on, on the weak side, or sometimes underneath it, there's also other action that's going on. And a lot of times the New York Knicks, they just get confused on the switches, on who should switch on who. And so there's just a lot of confusion that happens with this team. They're constantly confused on what their rotations are supposed to be, especially when they're switching that's going on away from the ball. Even at the ball sometimes, even on the ball sometimes they get confused on how they should switch, on whether they want to switch or whether or not they want to stay with their man. So there's just a lot of confusion. And then also they just don't hustle out to the 3-point line. And then even the other thing too, a lot of times when somebody does drive in the lane, some of the passes that these players are making it to swing it out to the 3-point line is how are you allowing some of these passes to happen? So it's just being committed, just making sure you like Clyde always says, being able to see the ball and see your man. And sometimes you got to be able to basically play the passing lanes, But in order for you to play the passing lanes, you have to be confident, right? And for you to be confident, you have to know that, okay, I know what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to do, and basically I'm doing my job. And if you're basically confident in what you're supposed to do and you're doing your job, you're going to be more confident and be able to, like, basically play these passing lanes, and you're going to know exactly what the offense is trying to do. And so, especially some of those passes, I think some of those passes that they make when these players kind of get underneath the basket, and it's like you see the players going way underneath the basket, he's not going to go for the layup. That's not going to happen. So why are you allowing them to kind of swing these crazy passes to the other side of the court, and it's just without even trying to go at contest that pass, right, or trying to steal that pass? So it's really just a player issue, and specifically the biggest problem, like I said, hate to sound like a little broken record, it was Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and R.J. Barrett, and they're also the biggest reason why the defense has improved the last 3 games, because they are now more committed on the defensive end. And we're going to go through the stats, and you guys are going to see that as well, right? And so the next thing I want to do is just pull up these stats for these players real quick for the season. I want to start off with the season stats, right? So you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I have the season stats for the New York Knicks. And so with these stats, I'm just focused on mostly, like I said, I'm trying to focus on their how well these players are shooting, right, versus how well they're defending, how well they defend their opponent, right? And so that's pretty much what we have here. So this is the defensive field goal percentage here. So for Brunson, it was basically 48%. Julius Randle was over 50%, 50.2%. R.J. Barrett was 47.2%. R.J. Barrett was shooting 40% from the field. Julius was shooting 46% from the field. And Jalen Brunson was shooting 48.7% from the field. And so Jalen Brunson, although his defense was atrocious, at least he was more efficient than the opponent. And then not only was he did he maintain a better efficiency than the opponent, he also made more field goals than the opponent. But look, these numbers are not all, basically doesn't tell the whole story, right? So I'm not going to pretend that these tell the whole story, but they do tell the majority of the story. This allows you to simplify the game right here, right? At the end of the day, you want to be more efficient than the opponent, and you want to score more points. You want to make more field goals than your opponent. That's really what you want to do, right? And so that's what we're trying to do here. Because I guess the one thing I want to say, the reason why this doesn't tell the whole story is because of Jalen's inefficiencies on the defensive end, because he's so bad on the defensive end, it has a cascading effect. It has like a domino effect on the rest of the team on the defensive end, right? It can cause people to lose patience, to give up. So there's a lot of things that happen. Those are basically the worst things. The one thing that it does cause all the time, it causes confusion, right? Because then if you don't do your job, or you hesitate in doing your job, there's a man who's behind you trying to basically cover for you in case you miss your assignment. If you hesitate, there's confusion there, and then the man behind him who's supposed to step up is not going to know what he's going to do, what he needs to do to help cover for you, right? And also, if you just flat out get beat really bad, and you don't even do a good, decent enough job, you don't even bother trying to make contest the person driving into the lane, it does cause a huge issue. It makes it very difficult for people to, if the ball swings out to the 3-point line, it makes it very difficult for the team to actually recover, right? But we're going to look at all that stuff to see how much of an impact that's having on the defense. But for now, like I said, we're just trying to simplify it, and I'm just trying to show you guys the defense from these 3 was just atrocious. That was the issue for this team. Cam Reddish, interestingly, his defense was also he was giving up 50%, which wasn't very good. And so that was really interesting to see. I wish I was tabulating my own stats on this to see exactly if this was really accurate, but this is what NBA.com is showing right now. But we're going to focus on Jalen, Julius, and RJ, right? So this is what they're doing basically for all the season before the Cleveland Cavs game. Atrocious defense. Now let's switch over to the last 3 wins the New York Knicks have had. So we're going to start with the most recent game that we won. The New York Knicks beat the Hornets. And if you look here, R.J. Barrett basically shot 50% from the field. The opponent and he basically held the opponent to 43% shooting. And that's on 16 shots he contested. So he contested quite a few shots and held them basically to 44% shooting while he shot 50%, right? And then on top of that, he scored 26 points, and the opponents that he was guarding only scored 18 points. He also made, he made 3 more field goals than the opponent did as well. But the biggest thing, he basically scored 26 points on 50% shooting, while the opponent only scored 18 points on 44% shooting. Like I said, remember R.J. Barrett. What was he doing for the season? He's doing basically, he was at 47% while shooting 40% from the field. So he's a minus 7%. When he's on the floor, he's way less efficient. He's a drag on a team when he's on the floor. That's pretty much what this means, right? But the last 3 games, that's not the case because he's playing better defense. Because you have to either play crazy, flat-out elite defense to bring the percentage below 40%, or you need to increase your efficiency on the offensive end. It's like one or the other. You got to do something to help your team. It's just really that simple, right? Either you got to improve your defense or you need to be way more efficient on the offensive end. Julius Randle, this game. For the season, he's allowed 50%, but the Hornets game, he only allowed 33% shooting. Jalen Brunson allowing about 48% from the field on the season. This game, he only allowed 38.5, almost basically 39% from the field, right? Now, let's go down to the previous game, the Hawks game. In the Hawks game, R.J. Barrett allowed 50% shooting. He shot only 30%, so he was minus 19. But let's look at the other guys, right? So, R.J. Barrett didn't have a good defensive game against the Hawks, right? But let's look at Julius. Julius held his opponent to 28% shooting, right? Although it was only on seven challenges, he only defended 7 shots. Jalen Brunson held the opponent to 33% shooting, although it was only on 30. He only challenged six shots, right? And then, but the thing was, if you look down here, Quentin Grimes, McBride, and Emmanuel quickly challenged quite a few shots in this game because we were playing the Hawks, and the Hawks are a guard-dominant team, and so these guys had their work cut out for them, but they did an excellent job against the guards on that Hawks team, right? And so, but these guys are not the problem because if you look at these guys, McBride, Grimes, and Quickly, the rest of the team, even though Toppin, although he had a terrible game here, he played only 7 minutes. I think he got injured this game. Yep, I think because he didn't play. He didn't play the Hornets game. Nope, he didn't play the Hornets game. So this is the game he got injured. But anyway, but these guys, the rest of the team, they're not really the problem. The rest of the team plays pretty solid defense. So let's go over to the whole season and look at the rest of the team. Look at the rest of the team here. Cam Reddish, he's the one that wasn't that good, but Emmanuel Quickly holding the opponents to 40.1% shooting. Obi Toppin, 43% shooting. He was holding the opponent. Mitchell Robinson, he's holding opponents to basically 43.6% shooting at the rim. That's very good. Derrick Rose, 39.6%. Hartenstein, for the season, it says 42%. I don't know. But this is before, I don't know about this. Sometimes I just don't even know if I can trust some of these NBA stat numbers. Because it seems like every time, especially, I want to say definitely the last 12 games, it feels like people are just walking to the rim on Hartenstein, and he can't stop anything. So this 42% is really interesting. Very curious about it and how they arrived at that number. Jericho Sims, 60.9, but he doesn't play very much. Quentin Grimes, 37%. Whew. 37%, almost 38. That's lethal. I mean, this is what basically Emmanuel Quickly was doing first half of last season. That is extremely impressive. 37.7%. Now, this is what I wanted to see. Last year, for the season last year, he was at 46%. I didn't feel like he was that efficient in actually challenging the shots. He was able to keep the man in front of him last year, but in terms of how effective it was, at least NBA.com was showing that he just wasn't that effective. And even if you looked at a lot of the defensive stats on him, even remember I'm watching a lot basically a show over the summer that was heavily focused on that Donovan Mitchell trade. I think it was like a Utah, a bunch of guys that cover Utah, and they were talking about like Quentin Grimes and his stats about how we were overrating Quentin Grimes. In isolated situations, there were some of the defensive stat that really made him look good. But if you look at the overall defensive stat for Grimes last year, it wasn't really that impressive. I think we really overrated him. We did like what we were seeing on the screen, being able to keep the man in front of him. But like I said, when that man goes up to take that shot, is Quentin Grimes making that person break the shot? Last year, no, he wasn't, because the people he guarded shot 46% from the field, basically, right? But this is excellent this year. He is playing excellent defense this year. This is pretty much it's looking like elite defense this kid is playing, especially his ability to strip the ball. His hands are so fast, you know. Like if you look like you're about to get by him and you expose that ball, he's gonna rip it from you. And it's gonna come off your legs. So I think people are gonna start being afraid to drive to the basket against him. He is just unbelievable. So the combination of him and Mitchell Robinson is going to be something awesome to watch. It's already pretty good, and we're seeing the benefits of it. And I want to give him kudos. He did move to the starting lineup, but let me caution everyone. Quentin Grimes were playing in a lot of these games, and he was playing excellent defense all year. He's been playing excellent defense. And the New York Knicks, prior to that Cavs game, was stinking it up and was getting blown out, getting embarrassed. And Quentin Grimes were playing in those games, and he was still playing excellent defense. The problem are these three players, right? And so this is just to prove to you guys, the rest of the team were pretty solid. They weren't the issue. The issue are your three top guns right here. And so if we go back to the last three wins, your top guns they have dramatically improved. Although this game, RJ Barrett didn't play that great on the defensive end, but at least 2 out of 3 of them played excellent defense. You know, they played good defense. They were effective at their job. And then the rest of the team, like the guards that we had out there, because the Hawks are a guard-dominant team, they take the majority of the shots. You know, Quentin Grimes, McBride, and Quickly, they were up to the task, and they actually did their task, and they did it very well against the Hawks. Excuse me. So now let's go to the Cavs game. This is the game that started all of it. Now look at the effort from these guys against the Cavs. You know, look at this. You know, these are the guys. They're giving you basically 50% shooting from the opponent. They're allowing the opponents to shoot 50% from the field, just about close to 50%. I'm just averaging out 3 of them. They're giving you about 49, 50%. You know, that's what they're allowing the opponents to shoot. And look at what they did one game after that Dallas Mavericks game. You know, now you guys tell me, you know, what's going on here, right? Or you guys, it's not like, and this is why, like, I got to the point where, like, look, if they're not going to play defense, you gotta get rid of these guys. You can't have these guys on a team if they don't want to play defense, especially if the coach, this guy's supposed to be a defensive coach. And if he can't get his 3 top guns to play defense, then what do you have? You know, we're not good enough on the offensive end. We're just not. And so we have to play defense. And it was good to see that these guys actually got their head out of the sand or wherever it was, you know. They got it out and they started playing defense, you know, and they became a little more committed, you know. But we'll have to wait and see. It's only 3 games. You want to see consistency, right? And honestly, I'm liking what I see. I'm really liking what I see. You know, they can do damage if they're going to play this kind of defense. You know, I've always maintained that. If you're going to play elite defense, you're going to do damage and you're going to get into the playoffs, and you're probably going to advance out of the first round of the playoffs if you play good defense, especially the kind of defense they've been playing the last 3 games. You give yourself a chance when you play that kind of defense. But if you can't play that, if you're not committed to playing that kind of defense, then it is what it is, and you're just not going to be very good. And so, because we're just not good enough on the offensive end, you know, because you also have to look at it from the standpoint, if you're not playing good defense, then you're always behind the 8 ball, and you're always trying to catch up, and so you're going to be pressing a lot more. But if you're playing excellent defense, you can just be patient with your offense, and it's going to come to you, and you're going to be a lot more efficient, And look, these guys are going to be a lot more efficient if they continue playing this kind of defense because they don't have to press on the offensive end because they know if they miss a shot, right, they're going to go right back on the defensive end. They're going to play good defense and they're going to get the ball back. And then they're going to basically be able to get another crack at it, right? So they're always going to have the chance to be patient, right, on the offensive end and play within the flow of the offense and not press. They're always going to do that when they're playing elite defense and they're stopping teams from scoring. That's just what's going to happen, and that's what we have here. And so, like I said, the previous game, the previous video we did, I asked, was it the scheme or was it the players? I've already established my claim that it's the players, and the stats just shows it. The stats prove it. These three guys that's been a drag I've been complaining about this whole year, who's basically allowing the average is 48.4%. That's what they're allowing the opponents to shoot, right? The three top guns. They've turned it around, They've really turned it around. They're the ones I've been complaining about, and they were the issue. And it's almost like they walked down the aisle, and and they got saved. I don't know why. Yeah, they got saved and saw Jesus. They like coming to Jesus moment. They're saved, right? And that's pretty much what's happening. Look at the average. This is the average field goal percentage. The average field goal percentage for RJ, Julius, and Jalen, the last 3 games, this is what they're allowing opponents to shoot. They're allowing opponents to shoot 35% on average, from the field. But that's a little, you have to compare that to the median, because the median actually is will kind of give you a more accurate reading of how they're performing. So let's see. So the median is about 33, so that's about right. I mean, they're just killing it. So you go with 35%, basically. They're killing it on the defensive end. You got to give them credit, I dragged their name through the mud, because they weren't playing defense, And so I got to give them credit. You got to give them credit for playing defense, especially the kind of defense they're playing, I mean, here and there are some inconsistencies. You see, they still get a little relaxed, and they'll kind of especially when they have a lead, they start feeling themselves and they don't do what they're supposed to do. You still see that sometimes. I guess they're human. Overall, as long as they stay pretty consistent and they give you this, overall, and they're this effective, okay, you might be able to excuse them for plays here and there, right? But overall, I mean, you just got to give it to them. You got to give them a lot of credit, for the way they've played the last 3 games. And so now going on, I wanted to talk about the scheme. Look, I was one of the people that were complaining about how much they help, especially at the weak side. I would complain about how much they help off the ball, especially on the weak side, and whether it was really that necessary. And, the last video that I did, I talked about what motivated me to actually do a different kind of analysis to look at basically the 3-point defense on the Knicks in order to see if there was really an issue with the scheme or if it was the players. And it was really because of the coach, the press conference he gave after that Mavs loss. And he actually was saying things that, I did analysis before a long time ago, which actually motivated me to start doing these kind of videos. Long time ago, I did an analysis about NBA and 3-point shooting, whether or not it was basically one of the factors that determine whether or not you're going to be a winning ball club in the NBA, right? Your ability to shoot three-pointers. And so, and because it kind of reminded me, what Thibodeau had to say reminded me of that analysis that I did. And everyone was concerned about the team's ability to shoot three-pointers. They were also concerned about the team's ability to guard the 3-point line. But it seems like overall, the point they were trying to make was, oh, you need better 3-point shooters, on the floor to help at least counter the fact that we can't guard the 3-point line. And he didn't, he basically flat out didn't want to subscribe to that theory. And I kind of I did agree with him, right? And so then I was like, well, I got to see then what is the problem, right? My analysis has always shown that 3-pointers is not a determinant factor whether or not of your ability to win ball games. And the reason why is the league's percentage. The way the players shoot 3-pointers, they shoot in such streaks sometimes, right? That it's really hard for it to show any correlation between your ability to shoot threes and your ability to win ball games. Now, if you're the Golden State Warriors, that's a different story. If your ability to shoot 3-pointers over 40% and you're like around 42, 43%, like Clay and Curry was like a few years ago, that's a different ball game, right? But you got to think the rest of the league, the average is 35%, right? 35% is low enough, right? But then to make matters worse, it's too low for there to be any correlation between those numbers, right? Your output from 3 versus your win percentage. The percentage is way too low. And then on top of that, it's not like it's an even every game players are shooting 35% every game. No. One game they might shoot 40%, and then you may have like a stretch of 2-3 games they'll shoot 40%, and then you have 6 games where they're shooting like 20%. And those 6 games that they shoot 20%, their team might still win the ball game, right? Those teams still might win the ball game even though they're shooting like 23% from the 3-point line. Just look at the Knicks. I think one of the games we won in the last 3 games, I think we were shooting below 30% and we still won the game. So that your ability to shoot the 3 is not always a primary, is not a determinant. But my focus now was like, okay, so obviously the team's ability to shoot the 3 is not that big. I don't think it's gonna necessarily mean they're gonna win the ball game because the New York Knicks were actually more efficient than the opponent. And so that's what Tom Thibodeau's claim was. So I knew, okay, the issue is like our ability to guard the 3 because we're one of the worst in the league. So I go and start looking at it, and basically that was the case, right? We were overall more efficient than than most of the teams that we played from the field, but most of the teams that we played were more efficient than we were from 3, and also made more 3s than we did in those 21-22 games that we played, that I did the analysis on. And so, like I said, it got me thinking, what is the issue with, what's the issues with the players, what's the issue with the scheme? And then obviously, like I said, realized it was really the players just being confused, not hustling. That's pretty much what it came down to. Players just being confused, not hustling, lazy, intellectual laziness. It's just a lot of that, And I say intellectual laziness because that's pretty much what it is. A lot of times they just want to keep it simple, or they don't want to, they just want to, it's just like, it's a combination of both, intellectual laziness on the floor. They don't want to commit to basically being locked in on the defensive end. So they want to take the easiest path, right? They want to take the easiest choice. And so that causes a lot of problems as well. So that's what I mean when I say intellectual laziness. A lot of times that just means they're just not locked in on the defensive end. And so the other thing I remember was like watching highlights. And it was the Boston. As a matter of fact, it wasn't highlights. I was watching this game. I went to the bar around the corner from my house just to check out the game, Boston versus Phoenix. And I think the same night the Knicks played as well. And the first thing I noticed was Boston, they were helping quite a bit off, on a weak side off ball. And I'm like, wait, so when I saw it, I'm like, oh, so it's clear that the New York Knicks are not the only team that's, engaged in this kind of strategy in order to help their defense. And so And I looked at it, and it's basically sort of the same principles, basically, or same strategies that the New York Knicks employ, right? In order to guard the paint, you kind of try to have everyone just did, it looks like basically two or three play defenders that are off ball have paint responsibilities, right? So they try to stay as close to the paint as possible so they can help in case a penetrator comes into the floor into the paint. And the reason why they did do that is because I'm sure they've actually looked at it, they've analyzed it, and timed it. So if a player gets into the paint and swings the ball to the 3-point line, if the defensive player who collapses, and let's say he sprints out to the 3-point line, what is the percentage of the player like when he sprints out to challenge the shot? This league has so much data on this stuff. I'm pretty sure the reason why they basically play the defense this way is because they know that even if the ball swings out, let's say Chris Paul, right? He comes into the paint here. He comes into the paint, and let's say he swings it out to number 0 here. I think they have the stats to show that basically if this guy sprints out, this Celtics defender sprints out and challenges the shot after the ball swings out to him, the chances are this player is still going to miss. The league have percentages. These coaches, the analytics squad, they have the percentage on these, and I need to look it up to see exactly what it is. And it's got to be the reason why they're all kind of using this same technique. They're using the same strategy, the same principles on a defensive end, because they know this is what works, especially because this is the best way to guard the paint and a 3-point line. So then at this point, it's really all about, hey, if this works, then we just need to get our players to lock in, and we need to get them to be able to also hustle and commit to playing this kind of defense, right? And I watched this game. The Boston Celtics defense is like excellent, and they hustle. They basically guard the paint. And then when the ball swings out, they basically go out and challenge the shot. And so if you look here, Chris Paul's here, over here. And he's going to take this pick from number 22, and he's going to get here into the lane. As you notice here, everyone is sort of guarding the man. Before 22 went and set this pick, I don't know who this Celtics defender is, but he was pretty much on him. But as soon as he saw he was going to set this pick, because there's this other player here, he basically just sagged off, obviously. So this is what their basically operating procedure is on a defensive end for the Celtics. So the way he was confident just sagging off this pick here, it was just like, okay, I'm going to give up. He was fine giving up this 3 here. He was just more guarding. He doesn't want basically him to get into the paint and score. So essentially that's pretty much what happens. Comes off the pick and comes into the paint. So he's here in a good spot to basically, not a good enough spot to challenge the shot if he pulls up and takes a shot from the 3-point free throw line. But he's in a pretty good shot. It might be good enough. He might still be able to kind of sprint out and still challenge it once he kind of stops and tries to pull up. So let's say this is probably pretty decent position. But as we see here, that's not what happens. Chris Paul swings the ball out to a shooter on the right corner over here. And so once he swings the ball out, the shooter takes a shot. And in his possession, they missed the shot. But the whole point is, if you look here, when he's swinging the ball out, Brown is all the way, his foot is in the paint. And this is what I was complaining about. Like when the ball handler is in the paint, we have guys all in the paint. And this guy is in the paint. So is he going to be able to get out there fast enough to contest the shot, right? That was my concern, because the New York Knicks, they were not able to do it. And so I was like, well, they're not able to do it. Maybe it's just impossible. Maybe the scheme is just wrong. But no, it's clear the scheme is not the issue, because the New York Knicks are not the only ones employing this strategy. And as you see here, Brown, although he had his foot in the paint, by the time this ball makes it over to the shooter, I think this might be Bridges, Miles Bridges over here. By the time the ball makes it over to the shooter, he's able to get over there and give a good challenge. And also, the shooter actually missed a shot. And so he was actually effective at challenging his shot, right? And so then I kind of wanted to go in the last video I did talk about reviewing the scores, the 3-point field goals made by the Mavs, all of them that were made. I reviewed basically all the plays to see what happened. And look, I'm not a coach. I'm not an expert on these plays and how they're supposed to run. But it was pretty clear the issue were just the players, the lack of execution. They just weren't hustling. A lot of the issues, like I said, was there was confusions around switching, not even switching off ball, like when there was off ball action, they were confused about switching, even on ball. There was so much confusion on switching, it wasn't even funny. And then the other thing, there was a lot of they were giving up rebounds. And a lot of the rebounds that they gave up led to 3-point shots. And that was the other issue. And then I looked at the issues where I looked at the plays specifically where I try to make note of the plays specifically where basically the Knicks were really helping basically the defenders on the weak side, even on the strong side was basically helping way off. They were way off their man. Basically almost their foot was almost in the paint. You look at Mitchell Robinson here, his man is all the way in the corner and look at where he's at. And he's there because he's got responsibility to help guard the paint, right? And Julius is here on the ball. And this is one of the things I was complaining about, that we were helping so much that the ball handler doesn't even have to penetrate to basically pass the ball to a wide open man. And I was like, this is ridiculous. It's just not working because they can't get there, right? But then when you actually analyze it and look at these plays, the Dallas Mavs actually didn't even score that much on these plays. I think they might have actually made the shot maybe on 25% of the plays. So actually the scheme was pretty effective when the New York Knicks executed it, when they weren't confused, especially on this was one of the most simple ones. He doesn't even step in, he doesn't even step inside the 3-point line. He kind of fakes like he's going to go and then just passes it out. Just like exactly what I was complaining about. That was terrible and awfully wrong. But then what happens? You see here, when he passes, when the ball leaves his hand, look at where Mitchell Robinson is. By the time the player catches the ball and shoots it, look at where Mitch is. But then, of course, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Mitch is like one of the few guys on the team who actually plays defense and who hustles, and he was able to get out there and contest a shot, right? I mean, he struggled contesting 3-point shots recently, especially since he's put on the weight. He's just not as confident as he used to be the first couple of years. But still, he was able to hustle and get out there. And by the way, I think it was Keebler, and he actually missed his shot. But you know what happened right after this shot? The Knicks gave up the rebound. They're just like I think Grimes just looked at the ball instead of jumping or grabbing it. The ball just bounced towards him, and he just went right by him, and he was just looking at it. And they just didn't, and so they gave up the offensive rebound, and then that rebound turned into another 3-point shot, which actually Luka ended up hitting the 3-point shot. So actually, their defense guarded the weight when they executed this defense. It actually works, right? It looks like most of the time it works. It's just they need to be committed to doing it. They're just not committed to it, and so that's really what the issue is. Again, like I said, the reason why the New York Knicks are playing better defense, and you got to give them credit, is because of Julius. They won these last 3 games because of Julius, RJ, and Brunson, because of their commitment on the defensive end. And they were losing a ton of games prior to that because of their lack of commitment on the defensive end. Simple. It's just that simple. That's all it is, right? And so the other thing that's sort of like an elephant in the room for this team is Cam Reddish, right? Cam Reddish has been on the bench, and it doesn't look like he's even going to play for the rest of the season. He looks like he's pretty much done, and there's been reports that the New York Knicks are working with with his agents to find a home for him, another place for him. In my opinion, it was just really disappointing. He's not Tibbs' kind of player, and so I understand that. Look, I'm a Knicks fan, and I really wanted it to work out with Cam. I thought the Knicks made a lot of mistakes. Like I've said before, because a lot of basically because of Tibbs' decisions not to play the young players last year, for me, I thought that was a fireable offense. I thought last year they should have fired Tibbs. They should have made the change last year because I really felt that the lack of development, because you had to play these kids. Basically, last year was a wasted season. You knew the Knicks weren't very good. And if Tibbs is as good as he feels he is in analyzing the game and looking at the analytics, given the way the New York Knicks were playing last year, the lack of commitment on the defensive end from Julius, from pretty much everyone else, like not everyone on the team, but pretty much Julius Randle, RJ was sporadic, was pretty good in the first half of the season, then fell off, but mostly because of Julius. And then also you had Kemba Walker and Fournier also playing, and they were terrible on the defensive end. I mean, you know it was a wasted season. I mean, you look at those stats. I mean, you look at the stats that they put up those first 40 games. You knew there was no chance for them to make the playoffs. You know, they were just not even for a play-in, because they were not even playing a good enough basketball to even to get close to sniffing a play-in. And so because of that, and they knew the probability of them making it was really low. Even by midseason, by All-Star break, that was really what the talk is. Even with the reporters trying to figure out, okay, are they going to, are they going to take a step back, move some of these older players, then play the young guys? I mean, that's what everyone assumed they were going to do because it was just a lost season. The coach didn't do that. He felt that he still had a chance and that the best thing to do was still try to win with Burks as the point guard. Burks as the point guard, Fournier as a starting two guard. Both of them weren't very good defenders. At the three, RJ, who was basically at best, inconsistent on a defensive end, and Julius, who just didn't bother playing any defense last year. So basically 4 out of 5 players you had on the court were not very good on the defensive end last year. And the coach basically thought that was going to basically get him. I don't know what he thought that was going to do. But he didn't play the young guys. That's pretty much what he came out to. He didn't play the young guys. And so the problem with that is they don't develop. They're not comfortable, right? And now you're coming into another season and you need to sign these young players. You got to figure out what you want to do with them. And you don't know what you want to do with them because the coach didn't play them last year. It was a little infuriating for me. And I thought that he deserved to be fired. And honestly, I was wondering whether or not they should just can this whole front office. But obviously you don't want to. I thought that was going to be a little too rash. But and also the front office is clear from all the interviews recently. They're saying that they're basically loyal to Tibbs, so they weren't going to do that. But for me, I felt like what he did last year, the second half of the season, I thought he was not. And I still feel like he's not the coach for this team. The reason why he's not the coach for this team is because this is number one, it's a young team. We don't have any stars in this team. If you pick someone who has potential, that potential is going to fade. They're not going to be very good because he's not going to give them the opportunity. The one good thing about Tibbs, I've always said, he requires that you put in the work in the off season. That's the only thing that's good about the young guys. But I don't know what kind of work that they're putting in the off season, right? I don't know if that work that they're putting in the off season is going to propel them into stardom, any of them, or if it's good enough to propel someone who has the potential into stardom. RJ Barrett has the potential to be a star. But he's not looking like he's going to be a star. Although he's improved the last 4 or 5 games, the percentages look better, but he just wasn't looking like he was going to be a star. And so from that standpoint, I still feel that this is not the coach for this team because we just don't have any stars in this team right now. We have some good players, and with good defense, they can figure it out on the offensive end, and they can actually make it work. But we don't have any stars. And for if you want to develop one, let's say you get lucky and you get someone who's talented, right? And you want to develop that person into a star, is that really going to happen? Quentin Grimes is one person who I was actually thinking last year there was a possibility. Although, like I've always maintained, his production was way too low for people to think that he was automatically going to win that starting spot. And I still basically, I still actually 100%, believe that his production on the offensive end is just way too low. However, I felt like last year, even this year, just the tools that he has, there's an opportunity for him to actually be a very good player and even possibly a star in his league. He's kind of like, and it just needs to you just need to be able to, number one, you got to coach the person up right, help train them the correct way. And then the other thing too, you got to give them the opportunity, you got to play them. They need to play in games to try out the things they've been working on to get comfortable against NBA competition, right? So they can improve, so they can know what they can and cannot do, and then so they can, like I said, so they can improve. But there was a chance for them to do that last year, although Grimes was injured quite a bit last year. But even when he wasn't injured, I mean, Grimes was playing he did play 20 to 25 minutes, which wasn't bad at all. But it was just, they weren't even running plays for him when he was out there. He was taking 2 shots a game, sometimes 3 shots. It was ridiculous. That's why the production is just way too low for this kid. This year is a little better. I still want to see him take a lot more shots. So for me, I just feel like the coach's inability to give the kids opportunities so they can improve, in-game opportunities. If you're not going to give them the in-game, the NBA game opportunity, how do you know what you have? How do you know they're going to be any good? How are they going to even improve? So that's pretty much it. That's why I still feel he's not the coach for this team. Because we don't have any stars, and if you're not going to be able to get any stars, Tibbs, is just, I don't know. I'm not sure what he's going to get you. But definitely, I think, with this team that they have, if they continue playing this kind of ridiculous defense that they're playing, it's ridiculously good. If they continue playing it, I think they're gonna make some noise, and they could possibly, depending on who they meet in the first round, they can get out the first round. That's if they continue playing this kind of defense. That's what they will have to do. But if you want a star and you want to develop a star, Thibodeau's not your man. He's really not your man. You look at Obi, in my opinion, Obi has the tools to be something pretty special, but they have him just shooting 3-pointers. It's just the craziest thing. They just got him shooting threes. I'm not saying the whole leaking out all the time to get fast break buckets. I'm okay with him not constantly leaking out. I'm okay with that because I'm gonna camp he needs to stay back and get some damn rebounds. He's the power forward. He can't just leak out all the time. Especially if rebounding is an issue for your team. But but look at Obi. I mean, I think this kid, he's got it. He's got what it takes to be the potential to be a star. But it doesn't look like he's going to be a star because they're not playing him. He's not getting NBA minutes. He's not even when he is getting NBA minutes, they're not running plays for him that basically accentuates his good attributes, his talents, his athleticism. No pick 'em, they don't run pick and rolls for him. The one thing I'm liking from Obi the last few games, he started putting the ball on the floor more because it was because at a certain point, I can't really keep blaming the coach, because Obi is not a baby anymore, right? Obi is an adult. He's older than RJ and older than the rest of the guys. At some point, you kind of have to take your career, take charge of your own career, grab the career by your own careers by the horns, and do what you need to do. And you just got to find a way to improve and do better and show what you got, right? And because the coach is sticking you in the corner, doesn't mean you have to take every 3-pointer that comes your way. Even though you're open, put the ball on the floor. If the lane is open, nobody's running at you, just put the ball on the floor and go and see what else you can get. Or just pull up closer and take a pull-up jump shot from a little closer in. Just do something else. You don't have to do everything the coach wants you to do out there on the floor, especially if it doesn't fit your game, And so, but again, that's the reason why I feel like he's not, he's not your kind of player. You look at Emmanuel Quickly. Wow, Emmanuel Quickly has really drastically improved his ability. I mean, just a year ago, it was like he was like a program that was short, that was glitching out if he tried to go to the paint and go for a layup. It's almost like he didn't know how to basically drive to the lane, take 2 steps, and go for a layup. You know, and 1 year later, he's doing that. He's got all different kinds of layup packages. You know, he looks so much more comfortable driving to the paint. He's improved so much. He's improved his game so much. I mean, he still struggles with shooting. But given the way he played towards the end of last season, I thought they would have given him the opportunity. I didn't even think, I had no idea they were going to do the whole Jalen Brunson signing. I thought that was a foregone conclusion. I thought Brunson was going to stay with the Mavs. And I really thought they were going to give Quickly a shot after the performance, especially the last 40 games was pretty impressive, but the last 30 was extremely impressive. When you really look at his stats and his impact on the game, it was really good. And they just kind of like overlooked it, you know. But I think this whole team and the front office, they were in the tank for Jalen Brunson. They're all family, and so they knew it was going to happen. And so they were never going to give Emmanuel Quickly a shot, which in my opinion was malpractice. And so that's another reason why it's like at this point, it's not even with that one. It's not even just Tips' fault. That's the front office, because they knew they didn't want to give Emmanuel Quickly a fair shot. You know, it was clear they were going to get Jalen Brunson, and so they just never want to give Quickly that shot. You know, I would like to see Quickly stay on this team, but I don't know how realistic that is at this point, given how good he is. So I just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And so that's another one where I just feel like, a talent that's just going by the wayside. I mean, again, Cam Reddish is the other one. That's what began this conversation. You would think Cam Reddish is the kind of player, if Tiz basically puts some time with Cam Reddish, because Cam Reddish needs the structure and the discipline, right? And Coach Tips provides that. And so sometimes, given the kind of player Cam is, he should do well on the Tips. And actually, when he was starting on this team, he was actually playing well. And he was giving you production. He was shooting 46% on the season. He was shooting 46% from the field. That's the best. That's the most efficient he's been. Cam Reddish is going to be a good basketball player. If he goes to a team that has a good coach, if he goes to like a I don't know how good Ty Lue is with development of Doc Rivers, but if he goes to the right situation with a good coach that can kind of somebody just needs to invest in Cam Reddish. They need to invest the time in Cam Reddish. Look, there's a lot of things I don't like about the kid. Especially the way he plays. Sometimes it just, I don't know. There's a certain carelessness. Sometimes I feel once in a while that he plays with that I don't really appreciate. Sometimes it feels like he's not really focused or trying. But for goodness, sometimes it just looks like he's really effective at it, right? He's really effective, and he has improved. And I just think that is a player with the right coach. And if you just invest in a guy, it's going to work out. And the coach didn't do that. And last year was the opportunity for them to do that. They didn't even do that, And so that's just the problem. That's the problem with this coach, and that's the problem with this front office and his team. I don't know how they're going to get a star here, And it doesn't look like they're very good at developing stars. They've had some pretty solid opportunities here because they've had some guys with good work ethic on. They have guys with good work ethic on this team that have some talent, and it hasn't clicked for them, right? And those guys haven't taken a big step forward. And so maybe this year it will be the year, and maybe RJ does turn around. It looks like he's turning around on the offensive end a little bit, and definitely turned around on the defensive end. But we'll have to wait and see. There's only 3 games, and we'll see what happens. And starting tomorrow they play the Kings, and the Kings are a pretty good squad this year. We'll see what happens. If they beat the Kings and they play excellent defense once more, then I think I'm going to be a little more excited. And I think at that point we'll be over 500 for the first time in a few weeks. That's pretty much what I have, guys. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment below. Let me know what you think. about this video. Any questions, just put it out there. Put out any comments that you want, any critiques. I'll be more than happy to respond to any of them. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.